Once in a dark forest there lived a little boy named Edward. He has always been special and unlike other children of his age. His family was surrounded by secrets, and there were rumors of witchcraft in the village. The time of the trial came, and one rainy evening, when the moon was full, Edward heard the whisper of the wind calling him to the old grave field. The boy's heart was beating in anticipation of new discoveries. Under the moonlight, Edward found a dusty book covered with cobwebs, with hieroglyphs and unknown symbols on the cover. Excitement seized him, and he began to study the book, full of hope for the magical knowledge that it could reveal. But something went wrong. The words Edward read aloud revived an ancient demon trapped inside the pages. The demon, long forgotten by the world, felt free and pursued his own goal of revenge and destruction. He began to put nightmares into Edward's dreams, plunging him into madness and despair. At first it seemed that Edward's nightmares were limited to the realm of sleep, but gradually they began to penetrate into his reality. The shadows distorted around him, as if they came to life and became visible even in the bright light of day. Edward often heard whispers in his head calling him to commit unclean deeds. His hands began to do what he did not want, leading him to the inevitable path of destruction and suffering. Over time, the secrets of his family began to take on shades of horror. He discovered that his parents, who seemed kind and caring to him, actually worshipped dark forces and made sacrifices in the name of the demon he had awakened. He learned that his fate was predetermined and that he was the chosen tool to achieve bloody revenge. The little boy became a pawn in a dangerous game where death and darkness were the only ways out. His close friends and neighbors, whom he trusted, were involved in this dark mystery, and each of them carried with them their own sins and secrets. Local residents began to disappear, and their mutilated bodies were found in the forest, their blood left macabre traces on the ground. Through the twilight of hope, Edward realized that the only way to save his soul and stop this nightmare was to do what he was most afraid of. He had to plunge into the very heart of darkness, become the one from whom he had so terribly fled, and sacrifice everything he had ever loved. However, the price for this decision was high. In the course of his journey, Edward lost not only his innocence, but also himself. He became a shadow of the past, a cursed being who remained on the verge between life and death. His fate will remain forever imprinted in these dark forests, where he will spend eternity cursing the day when he opened an ancient book and awakened a demon. Plunged into the heart of darkness, Edward witnessed the horrors that hid behind the curtain of everyday reality. He became a puppet in the hands of a demon who manipulated him into doing terrible things. Inside his soul, a battle raged between the desire to escape and the steadily growing darkness that consumed him more and more. Other people who were involved in this dark mystery became tools of the demon, terrible creatures that drove Edward to plunge into an ever greater hell. Close friends and neighbors to whom he turned for help turned against him, turning into distorted shadows of their former selves. They began to constrict his will, making him feel like a prisoner in his own world of nightmares. The forest turned into a trap, where Edward's every move became predictable and served only to strengthen the demon's power. Local residents disappeared one by one, and their mutilated bodies, covered with wounds and traces of torture, were found in the devastated areas of the forest. Despair and horror gripped the hearts of the survivors, who became slaves of darkness, turning into soulless instruments of demonic revenge. Every step Edward took inside that darkness took him further away from reality. He stopped seeing the difference between light and darkness, between good and evil. His mind was distorted and his soul was stained with sin. He became a forgotten being, a prisoner of a dark world where only madness and suffering were the only guides. Now Edward was wandering forever in these dark woods, cursed not only by the demon he had awakened, but also by his own choice. His fate has remained sealed in this ruthless world, where he will wander, exploring the boundaries of his own hell and cursing his carelessness that led to this terrible fate. Eternity in the dark woods became a source of endless torture for Edward. He was torn out of ordinary time and turned into a prisoner of an endless cycle of suffering. Every day he relived the same terrible story, over and over again, without being able to free himself from this damned loop. To see magnificent moments of light and happiness in his dreams was only a painful temptation for Edward, because he knew that this was only a disguise, a ghostly illusion that would be destroyed as soon as he woke up. Darkness became his constant companion, and the horrors he experienced were so real that his mind plunged into bottomless madness. Every day Edward lost the last drops of his human being, turning into a distorted being who was constantly tormented and tormented others. He became an ugly reflection of the very darkness in which he found himself immersed. His skin turned pale and rotten, and his eyes sparkled with cruelty and madness. Every time he met other living beings, they saw in him only the source of their fear. He became a symbol of the evil that existed inside each of them. They feared him and feared that his terrible fate might one day turn out to be their own. Dark forests that used to seem like a place of mystery and mystery have become cursed lands, where every rustle and every shadow turned into a sign of approaching death. People began to avoid these places, fearing to run into Edward and get captured by him. This is Edward's fate, to be forgotten in this gloomy corner of the world, where his body and soul forever loom between reality and nightmare. It will become a warning symbol for everyone who dared to explore the boundaries of darkness and open the door to the world of demons.